that idea where you create this brand that stands for something, has kind of like a mission, has some things that the brand stands for and things that it maybe even more importantly doesn't stand for. But that kind of feeling where the people will latch onto it because they're like, yeah, this brand exactly identifies with my feelings. I want to be part of this brand. So Abs, back again for a repeat. We just had to have you back after last week's awesome episode about virtual assistants, and Andy's still in Mexico. So by default, I think it's nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of. So Abs, welcome back. How was your week so far?
Super productive. I think we've been doing a lot of cool stuff with the team so far.
What makes a productive week for you? Because, everybody listening to this probably has a different background. They are some people working full-time jobs and selling on Amazon as like a side hustle. You might, we throw that word around a lot. Some people are stay-at-home mom who does Amazon as their like full-time job on top of their job of a full-time mom. Dad's in the same situation. Some people who are kind of part-time work, part-time Amazon. You come from a different perspective in that we talked about it last week, you are part of our team, our chief marketing officer for our brand, not living in the US, but you are, I would say, a hustler still. You are you have the entrepreneur mindset. You're always looking to learn more. So what does it mean when you say productive? Because I think that means something different for everyone. And my productive week probably looks different from your productive week, but I wanted to get your take. What does it mean?
Well, because I lead marketing, a productive week for me starts with our goals, sales goals particularly, and campaign goals. So we have a bunch of campaigns running, and we have certain thresholds we want to sort of meet for each of those campaigns. And so when we are on track with those goals and thresholds and targets, and sales is looking good, that's the beginning of a productive week. And then being able to just check off a task on my list. And so far, I've been checking off a lot of things this week. So yeah.
In sales, before we get into our topic, talking about building a fan base and what Amazon sellers need to do in 2022 and beyond in order to keep selling well on Amazon and potentially off Amazon as well. We'll talk about that. But this is kind of a side note. Just want to get your take. Some Amazon sellers are obsessed with checking sales, and I wanted to get your take on that. Like, how much do you put a lot into like looking at sales every day when it's traditionally you were looking more at Shopify, but I think lately you've been looking at Amazon a lot more too. So what do you kind of think about when you're day-to-day sales checking?
Well, sometimes I get nervous when say it's 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. and sales are not going in the right direction. Well, for our company, it's different, right? Because we have clear goals for the quarter. And so those goals are then broken into weekly goals and daily goals. And so every day there's a certain number we should be at to get to that goal. And so I check it to be sure that, well, first of all, the campaigns are working. Sometimes I check it to make sure that our listings are up, and that's why sales are coming through, or our website is not broken. Because when you go on Shopify and you see nothing some days, it's terrible to look at. But now, the main reason why I check sales is just to make sure that everything is going on smoothly, and obviously we're on track with our target. But I've also learned to sort of let the day work out sometimes. We had periods where sales come through super early in the day. We have good sales starting off the day, and there are some days where you get to almost the end of the day before starts coming through. And so just learning to not stress too much about it. But I check it regularly to be sure that we're not spending money for nothing.
I think every Amazon seller goes through a journey. When you first get started, you're really excited. So you're kind of looking for that almost next sale, like literally one more unit, and you get excited. Then you kind of get used to that. And then it's all about, you still are checking all the time. But I think some people are like every 10 minutes, some people are every hour, and some people are able to control themselves a little more. Some people emotionally live or die by the sales of the day. I used to check way more. I kind of have not checked as much. And sometimes I'll go till almost like 5 p.m. our time before I'll like officially open the app and see where we're at for the day. And I try to just keep that mindset of it's all the work that we've put into place in the past that's really doing it and kind of trusting in the system. But I do like what you said. Sometimes there's things that do kind of break in a day, and you're able to find that because of your frequent checking. So you're like, oh, literally our website is down or the cart's not working or something. So I do think that matters. So, all right, just want to get that because it's almost like every Amazon seller I think can kind of laugh about it because everybody has these different OCD levels about checking their sales almost. So, all right, so I want to set the stage for what we think is super important through the rest of the year as a Amazon seller, or really more broadly as an e-commerce brand builder in general. And so setting the stage, right now in 2022, as we record this, it's definitely a shaky year from an economic standpoint, kind of from like a macro level of all that's going on, a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I mean, that's been the case for the last 2 years or plus since COVID, right? But in 2022, we're seeing things like the stock market go down a lot. We're seeing things, kind of different asset classes crash a little bit. So I wanted to just tie that to what does that mean as an Amazon seller? In 2021, there was a lot of aggregators that came into the space and started buying up a lot of brands. A lot of people listening might have known someone who sold their brand or thought about selling their brand or did sell their brand. And congrats to you if you did, because 2021 was a really good year to sell your brand. And this year, it's getting a little bit harder just because some of the money's drying up, the uncertainty. I don't think aggregators are buying as much. And in fact, some aggregators are kind of laying off some of their staff. They're trying to operate a little bit more efficiently instead of just straight up acquiring brands and like that being 99% of their probably quarterly and daily focus. They're like, okay, we have to actually operate all these brands, right? So we're seeing all that. And so what does that mean for our brand? By the way, going back to the sales, I just want to say, we're at like 1.3 million 30 days on the app. And what's really encouraging is that the sales have been pretty consistent. So that's where, again, it does feel good when you open the app and it's like, I mean, there's up and down days, but overall it's been pretty consistent, hitting 40,000+ a day ish in sales. So that's been encouraging. So I just wanted to tie that back to say, I guess when sales are good, it does, you feel a little bit less like you need to constantly check as well. So that's what we're looking at. So I just want to get your take. You obviously have only been in the Amazon game for a couple years now, maybe less than some of our listeners. However, some people listening might have only been selling for a year or less. And so everything's kind of new to them. What's kind of your take on the environment as an Amazon seller from what you've seen? You do a lot of reading, so you get like a lot of aggregate, opinions out there. What does that look like? And is it just bad news for sellers going forward, or what do sellers need to be prepping for and planning for?
Where we are right now almost feels like where we were in 2017 when Facebook changed their algorithm and you could not get free reach anymore, right? It's almost the same thing with the economy where we definitely know that we're going into a recession. We hear bad news everywhere. And when that happened with Facebook at the time, content creators were devastated because you couldn't get reach. You're putting all this effort into making content or building an audience on their platform. But what that taught a lot of people was the best would always survive. The best creators will still reach people. If you create really good content, you still get engagement. But if you just shabbishly just put stuff out there, you would be crushed. And I think we're going into the same space now where people are not willing to just spend money for nothing anymore because of COVID. And when we were sort of in that bubble-ish environment, anything could sell. You could literally buy a dog whistle and it will blow up. You get sales. But people are being more conscious and more conservative with how they spend money now. And we're literally in the same space. So I think what we're seeing right now is the brands or Amazon businesses that actually have a brand, that have a community, that are engaged, that get people to talk about them off Amazon are the brands that are going to survive. A lot of businesses would, get sold for pennies soon. Some would run out of capital to survive. But brands that actually have, their customer data, have built a solid brand are the brands that are going to survive this next few months to years that we're getting into.
So you made a lot of interesting points there. And what I would say is, if you've been following Andy and I for the last 5-6+ years, we've been kind of talking about content. I think our messaging has stayed pretty consistent in the sense that we've always kind of like been a little bit more conservative in our approach to launching brands. We say that you definitely need to have like the keyword demand there. You need to make sure that this is a product that's just not a Me Too product. And what's interesting? I heard the last year or two, based on what you said, some people that were like, hey, Amazon's like 2016 again. You can basically launch anything we used to always laugh about barbecue gloves. That was like our inside joke product where we said it was like the most saturated product out there. And it was like, you should definitely not do this. Well, people were literally launching products like spatulas and barbecue gloves again in 2020 and 2021 and being really successful because there was just so many customers shopping on Amazon the last 2 years that it bred a lot of complacency. And I think that's what you were basically summing up what you just said. It's like a complacent market, basically, where everybody's kind of winning. The rising tide raises all ships. Well, now we're in the sinking tide a little bit, or a tide that's going back to like a mean average over the past 5 years.
Right.
And so those products that people brought in, a dog whistle, for example, you said, if that's like a super saturated niche, which I haven't looked at dog whistles, I don't think, but I got to imagine it's very saturated just because of the, pet space in general is, easy pet products are saturated typically. You might have been successful last year, but it's probably going to be tough going forward, right? So that's what we want to talk about here, I think, is like, okay, so we've been pretty consistent. You can't just bring in these junk products, to be frank, right? And do well with them. And if that was your strategy the last 2 years, you might want to use all the experience you've gained in that time to shift a little bit your product selection criteria. Focus on products that you can differentiate, where there is clear demand that wasn't just COVID bump demand, but long-term, you can make a difference. You can own a niche. And one of the ways you can own a niche is by creating a cult following for your brand, or a raving fan base. Cult following sounds kind of bad, but honestly, the best brands out there have this kind of cult following, right? Apple for years, early 2000s, between, let's say, when did the iPod launch? Like 01, 02, in that time frame, 2000, do you remember? Obviously we were younger. Between that time frame and maybe like 2010, Apple was still kind of relatively small. And so it was like this cult following where everybody who was an Apple fan, like, it was like an us versus them mentality, and they loved it. And everybody who didn't use an Apple just didn't understand. Now Apple's so big, I don't really think of it as a cult following because it's, the largest company in the world. But that idea where you create this brand that stands for something, has kind of like a mission, has some things that the brand stands for and things that it maybe even more importantly doesn't stand for, and you create a little bit of a division on your brand. Like, our brand is only for people who, like, if it was the dog whistle brand, it's like only for people who love this breed of dogs, and if you think any other breed of dogs is good, you're stupid, almost, type thing, right? Now that's like an extreme form of it, but that kind of feeling where the people will latch onto it because they're like, yeah, this brand exactly identifies with my feelings, and I want to be part of this brand. So what does that actually look like? It's hard because traditionally, Andy and I have been kind of your more standard Amazon seller. Like, we're just looking at keywords. We don't care as much about branding as just like getting a good product up and dominating keywords and PPC. And that's all that really matters to us. The outside branding doesn't matter so much. We've talked about Andy sold a brand last year for multiple six figures where he had no website. He had no like cult following in a sense, although he actually did have a little bit of a cult following, like unknowingly, because people loved his product and so they kept buying it. But that was so there is that element to it. But he could have done way more with it. He could have actually fostered like a group environment. He could have had like a social group around it. He could have had a website, and he didn't, and it still worked out for him. But if he would have done that, I think it would have sold for a lot more. And he says that too. He just didn't. He didn't kind of create that following. But then you come from this more branding D2C world where, prior to working on our Amazon brand, you followed a lot of D2C companies where they don't sell on Amazon, and they basically live or die by their branding. That's all that matters. So there's the two extremes, like you're only branding, keywords don't matter, people only search for your brand. And then the other extreme where we kind of come from in our past was like, branding doesn't matter at all. It only matters if you can go on the first page of search for a keyword, say dog whistle. And now I feel like those two extremes are coming to a heads where you really have to understand both in order to be successful on Amazon long term. And for those people who the last 2 years did just kind of go in the traditional Amazon keyword space, need to pretty quickly look at branding elements, would be at least what we're trying to do and what we think is going to be better for long-term success. So we actually did this, and you were super involved with this process, and you're leading up this charge. if anybody's following our $10 million challenge, if you sign up to be an insider at amazingfreedom.com, you get these updates on this $10 million challenge. We're trying to hit 10 million on Amazon. And one of the big things we're trying to do with that is create a new $1 million product line. I don't know if we'll get there. Creating a new product line that does $1 million in 1 year is obviously very difficult. Like normally it takes a couple of years to get to $1 million. We do have the benefit of the brand already existing, but still to create a new product line that's different from our core products is tough. But we've had a really good start. And I think it's because we're creating this raving fan base around this sub niche within our brand. And so maybe talk about like some of the key elements that you're trying to do on the marketing front with this new product line when it relates to creating like a real brand presence and social around this. What are like maybe one or two of the key things you're trying to do?
Okay, before I answer the question, let me touch on what you talked about a little bit. So yeah, before you had this purely Amazon crowd, which you and Andy sort of fell into that bucket. And then we had this D2C website, Facebook ads sort of crowd. But right now, you can't be in any of those buckets by yourself or just be in one of those buckets. You have to be a combination of both, and with like a third segment now, which is like the retail segment. So all of those D2C companies we were looking at, or the fancy with the best branding and flashy looking logos, they've all had to start selling on Amazon, open a brick and mortar store, or go retail, because one channel cannot build a sustainable business anymore. That's what we've discovered. Think of the Dollar Shave Clubs. Every of those D2C companies have either had to start selling on Amazon or go the retail route. But what makes it easier for brands like that to immediately come on Amazon and start crushing it is because they already have the branding, they already have the raving fan review. Some of them have hundreds of thousands of people in their Facebook groups. And so when we saw that, we knew it was the perfect time this year to build a more holistic, well-rounded business that's not just dependent on Amazon, but we could literally, potentially launch physical locations or go to retail, but also have a brand that people are proud of, a brand that people love, and brand that could live on for a long time. And so what we started doing this year first was look at what we felt made us who we are, which again, we talk about this stuff all the time, but we had to really go down to why do customers love our brand and our product. And we made sure we understood what that was. We broke it down into how we communicate that clearly to our customers. And one of those things I think we talk about all the time on the podcast is that we are customers first. Like we are obsessed with making sure our customers are satisfied, just taking off from the whole Amazon strategy there. And so we knew that if we want to be successful in this space where it's competitive, we're launching the very first product here, the community had to know that we were community first and we cared about what they had to say. And so we started right off by launching a list of sort of content strategies. We're putting out Instagram reels literally every day, but those reels were not just about us. It was reels about us asking the community, hey, how do you use products like this? How do you like products like this? We have Instagram lives with people in the community. And that was us being very honest and vulnerable at the same time, telling the community, yeah, we sell stuff, but we don't just sell stuff for selling stuff. We sell stuff to solve a problem. And so what are the problems that, you have that we try to solve? And what we've learned in the last few months of, launching this new line and having a bit of success there is people actually care when you care, right? Like it doesn't matter what you sell. If you show the community or the people you're trying to sell to that you actually care, either from a place of knowledge or a place of wanting to learn, people actually care. And we've seen people respond so positively to us, where they reach out to us and say, hey, this part of the product could be improved, and we take that to heart and we let them know we appreciate it, we try to improve it. And what that has done is it builds this compound effect where the first person that buys the product recommends it to the second person, to the third person, and it builds that word of mouth sort of virality. And we could say within our small niche of community, like we could say our customers are actually bleeding our brand's blood. Like they are that proud of us, they're that excited to share it. We look at our comments sometimes, and if somebody tries to bash us, that people there literally fighting to defend the brand, and we're really, really, really small, at least still. And so it's being very open with the community, letting them know exactly what you're trying to do, how you're trying to help them. And for us, we do a lot of things that it's not so wise from a business perspective. We do a lot of discounts discounts for certain segments of our community, like the vet community, those that have served the country in the military. We do stuff for small businesses, and those things tell the community and our customer base that this company doesn't just sell stuff, but they care. And then when they know we care, we see the return in sales. So that has been our key premise of building our brand, and we're expanding it now to get more of those community members to tell us what they think and supporting them however we could. I know some people in our community lose access to their social media, and the moment they come back, we blast that, hey, this person is back, go follow them. And it's crazy for a brand to be asking to go follow a regular person, but they show us love, we show them love, and that's really what it's all about. And in return, they give us amazing reviews on Amazon. We get them to tell their friends and family about the brand, and that has been the entire strategy. And so far, it's been working really well for us.
And so to tie that back to what we were saying with the aggregators in the environment, I think there's a lot of bigger players on Amazon than there were 3 years ago, right? Let's just say that there's a lot of people have recognized the opportunity that we've been talking about for 7 or 8 years now. There's just more competition, more players, whether that be Chinese competition or now like these US aggregators. But I think the way that you and I and everybody listening to this can still win as a maybe smaller fish in a big pond is to niche down, like we always talk about. The riches are in the niches, we've been saying for 5 years, and to dominate this little space by providing something that these aggregators or these bigger guys can't do. And that's what you were just saying there, Abs, like actually caring about this niche. Like if an aggregator has 100 brands they're doing and like all this stuff, they can't care as much about one segment of customers as we can. And so all of our effort and attention is spent on creating these following, putting out content. We are making videos. We're writing articles. We're just talking about stuff. And I think everybody listening to this, if they have a product that they somewhat care about or know about, which not everybody does, but if you start to find products like that, it makes it even easier. We've been talking about that on the pod for a couple of weeks now, how if you don't have to be passionate about what you do, but if you have some kind of knowledge about it, it does make it easier to create this following then. Or if you don't, you really need to try to partner with like an influencer or somebody who can get behind the product and do that for you. And so, for example, we're actually paying somebody monthly, or several people, but one lady I'm thinking of now, we're going to be paying her monthly to essentially just put out content for us. So it's not even like a normal influencer where you're paying them to promote your product. We're paying her to create content, which is a new concept. It's a little scary because we're trying to figure out like the economics of it, how we realize like a ROI on it. But we do think that this new product line we've launched successfully is because of our cult following, our raving fans, and she's going to help us do that by creating like a podcast or a YouTube channel around this idea of product lines that we have. So that's where I think smaller sellers, and I quote unquote smaller sellers, I put us in that bucket still. So anyone doing really, under 10 million or whatever can still win in a niche by caring more than the other people do and creating content that is relevant and creates a following base.
Right. Just to add to this topic before we move on. So Gary Vaynerchuk, who we consider the OG of social media, talks about how he spent hours just replying to people in his DM and engaging with the community when Twitter was really small, and that's how he built his sort of following and stuff. And I know on the podcast we talk so much about going to the niches, diving down and looking for those products that you could really own. I think the same way we look at product research. In this environment with where we are on selling on Amazon, you literally need to do the same thing outside Amazon, where, okay, here's the product you want to get into. Here's the niche. You feel like you figured it out. You understand what that looks like on Amazon. You need to do the same thing with off Amazon. Where are the people that are interested in this niche? Where do they spend their time online? Are they on Facebook? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they on Reddit? Are they in Quora asking questions? Are they on Twitter Spaces? Are they on Instagram hashtags? Are they on TikTok? Where do they sort of spend time online? And sort of how big is that community? Let's take a simple example. Say I wanted to sell. I have Apple Watch here on me. I wanted to sell this Apple Watch bands, right? And you research this on Amazon. You feel like there's a good niche there. You could get this either from China or wherever. Before you even put up your listing, I've said the next thing you should do is, where are the guys that love this that love Apple Watch and want to always change their bands, where do they spend time on? Are they on TikTok? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Reddit? And let's assume that they were on Reddit and there's this, subreddit of people just talking about, how you could mix match different bands on your Apple Watch and how you could do stuff. I would say the same way you spend time doing research, you live and breathe in that subreddit. You should be asking questions. You should be commenting on stuff. You should be contributing. You should be making content that's educative and just putting it not to sell stuff, but to actually build a community there. Because when you do that, you don't need PPC to kick off sales. You don't need to spend so much to get your initial sales going, because that community is what builds your brand for you. And we've seen that for us, for ourselves, where we now know that before we think of any brand, we need to be sure of where the community is, what the audience is, and we have somebody on our team that can be a face or a voice for that community, where we could genuinely build a following and then begin to put our products forward. And so this is how I think we're looking at launching product now, or even scaling brands now, where it's not just what's the keyword saying, what's the PPC, how can we rank for this, is how can we get people interested in this, interested in us, that we could make them come by. And that's the dynamics and the changing landscape so far.
And if you're listening to this, like I am listening to Abs talk, it sounds like a lot of work, which it is, admittedly, to do all the things you just said. But I'll just say there, I think a lot of people are consumers of social media. Like, we'll spend, the stats out there are pretty high, and they're probably less so for our audience listening, who are kind of harder workers, I would say, probably on average, American or whatever. But most people will consume 30 minutes to an hour easy of social media. And if you just kind of flip that a little bit, instead of just kind of scrolling through people you already know, kind of seeing the same stuff over and over, if you work on your brand, work on your business, and you spend that hour instead doing those things that Abs just said, commenting, helping this niche, becoming either a mini authority in your space, or just being relevant and kind of understanding the space and who is the authority and who would be the main people you'd want to work with on your brand or get content from, that is probably a better time spent. A lot of times we all have the same amount of time of hours in the day, and it's just how you utilize them. So there probably are ways to kind of pull that out. And I want to say this, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this, but we did a live in-person workshop on building a brand in Springfield, Missouri, before our Tribe 7 conference. And it was really good. Our best one we've ever done. I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago on the pod. And as a follow-up to that, that day we spent a lot of time talking about these topics in a little bit more of a tactical way, how you can find your niche and start building your brand. So we dove deep into this topic that we're talking about now. And as a follow-up to it, we're doing a 6-part live training, kind of end-to-end private label, how to find the product that you are going to build $1 million brand on, where you're going to get it made, all the little things you have to do. How do you build your audience? How do you build your brand? And we're going to do it in a pretty long 6-part training that will happen over probably 3 or 4 months, and really dive deep into all of these topics and more. And so I just wanted to mention that originally that was only going to be for people that attended that event. We had 30-something sellers there, and this was a post follow-up to that to really help them not just get that theoretical concept that day, but then the tactical, literally how-to steps of building $1 million brand. What we've learned now, getting to 8 figures over the last couple of years in our $10 million challenge. That was just going to be for those people. But we had several people reach out just in the last couple of weeks where we've been talking about this, saying, hey, Andy and I used to sell a course. We've kind of put that on pause as we've been busy building the brand. Some people asking, how to get access to that, how to do that. We haven't been opening that to anyone just because we haven't been relatively updating it. So we had kind of wound that down. But we said, okay, maybe this 6-part training we would open up. So anybody listening who does want a full A to Z training on how to build $1 million brand, what Andy and I have learned, if you go to amazingfreedom.com/freedom, we're going to, for a limited time, let people join. Essentially, kind of, you're a little bit late to the party because we did the 1-day live meetup already. However, we'll kind of recap that and cover it, and then go into the very detailed 6-part covering everything after that. So you are a little bit late, but you won't be behind because we'll still cover that, everything we need to know there. We'll give out the resources, some of the kind of swipe files and handouts that we're using. We have we've gotten way more sophisticated in our in order to go from $1 million brand to an 8-figure brand, 10 million plus, we had to do so many more spreadsheets and tools that we use now that we've really just developed over the last 2 years as we built our team up to 30 plus team members that we have on the team. So we're going to kind of package for the first time all that into a templated form that people can use going through this training. So if that's you, if you've been following, if you've been a little bit bummed that we haven't done our course like we used to do with our inner circle training and all that, we haven't done that for over 2 years now. But if you go to amazingfreedom.com/freedom, you can sign up to join that training before we get started here. And I think that would be the best way to follow us and get going on that. So then I just wanted to tie that all up with saying, so Abs, 2022, you can't just be keyword based. You could potentially just be D2C. When we say D2C, that's direct to consumer, right? You could just focus on that. But our approach going forward, we've seen, is to blend that. Like, why would you give up all the Amazon knowledge that a lot of us have already learned? Like, Amazon's still the most powerful shopping platform in at least the US, if not the world, right? Maybe some China things could compete, but one of the most powerful. We have all this knowledge. There are clear ways to launch products and win from day one. We literally will launch new products, and within a week, we just launched one as part of this new product line. We did have that following base, but it got 150 sales in the first 30 days, and it's just getting momentum, right? So you can't really do that on your website without being really good at ads and kind of having that base. So we say, hey, take the blended approach, use the power of Amazon, but then use all these other good tactics as well to create a true raving fan base. Anything else on that, Abs?
Nope. I think that's it, and we're going to be covering that and more in the training that will be coming up.
Yeah, and by the way, if you've been enjoying listening to Abs, this is just a very top surface level of the wealth of knowledge that he is. He'll be helping to, as our chief marketing officer for our $10 million Amazon brand, he will literally be helping to put together some of the things that Andy and I really don't even know everything that he does on a day-to-day basis. So we rely heavily on him, and he'll be packaging for the first time some of those strategies into this training. We'll be looking at helping us there. Hey, I did want to mention that the Amazon Seller Tribe is turning 5 years old. I think this month. We're celebrating at the end of this month. It might have even been last month, but 5 years, that's pretty incredible that it was 2017, which is hard to believe that 2017 was 5 years ago, that we started the Amazon Seller Tribe with Gay Lisby, and it's turning 5 years old. We're celebrating that. And I just wanted to give a shout out to it because not too many groups or programs, whatever you want to call it, actually make it to 5 years. It's kind of like, I forget the exact stats, so I'm going to botch it, but there's something with like television where if a show can make it to like 100th episode, it's kind of like arrived, right? Like most shows don't make it. Well, first of all, most shows don't even get a season, right? Like they don't get past whatever that big gate is. Then most shows past that, like 80% don't make it past their first season. And then some small number actually get to 100 episodes. I kind of feel like the tribe turning 5 years old is like getting past that 100th episode of a sitcom or something, because it's just a testament to how good the group is, how good Gary Ray and Gay Lisby have been, how many $1 million sellers have come from the tribe, over 100 are in it. And it just shows that if you want to learn how to sell on Amazon or take your arbitrage selling to the next level, I mean, this is like the premier group to do that. And most groups are not going to be able to last for 5 years and still have such a good fan base. Going back to our original topic on this, building a raving fan base, I mean, that's the tribe, right? Everybody in the tribe has that tribe mentality and mindset. And that's why it's been able to last 5 years. Because if you try to start something like that, it's hard to make it past a couple months with anybody caring and wanting to go to it. So shout out to the tribe turning 5 years old. Really, really good job by Gay Lisby and Gary Ray to do that. And then I also want to just end by saying one of the things I've been able to do this year that's been a huge help is automating, I'll say automating, but handing off the FBA shipments for our brand. AMZ Pro is always taking care of this for us, but as you know, when you have an FBA shipment discrepancy, you have to actually get your invoices properly, submit them to Amazon to prove that you purchased this product, basically. And there was still a lot of like back and forth with that sometimes I had to be involved with. Well, I had our inventory manager basically completely take this over, which I should have done a couple of years ago, 2 years ago probably, but I had her completely take this over. And now she's just working directly with AMZ Pro, and AMZ Pro is really doing a much better job to make this super, super simple. So now We have a report that's going to be going out to people every single week, kind of automatically sending them, hey, these are all the shipments that you need to send us invoices for. And I've gotten feedback already from people that this is hugely helpful just to see a full list of all the shipments that are currently needing invoices. And for a bigger brand like ours, it's a little overwhelming still because I get the email and there's like 30 different shipments that need invoices. But so I'm like, okay, you take care of this, our inventory manager. And that's been a huge help. But just getting that email, kind of summarizing it, I think is going to be really helpful for people to see that all in one place. All right, Abs. Thanks so much again for filling in for Andy, but I've really enjoyed your insights. So we'll have to have you back in some capacity, of course, in the future. If you are looking to build a brand in 2022 and beyond, if you don't want to make mistakes that we've seen so many sellers make through the years, join us on the 6-week training that we're doing, amazingfreedom.com/freedom. It's going to be really in-depth. It's going to be really tactical. It's not just going to be on the pod here, we kind of talk about like big concepts. This is like taking those concepts and saying like, okay, now how do you actually like do this and find your product that's going to give you the freedom to build equity in an actual sellable brand someday, right? And that's, I think, kind of the ultimate dream for a lot of us. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Podcast. See you guys.